This isn't a saxophone, it's an umbrella.
So I've been playing an umbrella for 30 years? Why didn't anybody tell me?
The Simpsons has been running for so long that it feels like the characters of Springfield are immortal. The town never ages, the children never grow up, and the calendar seems permanently stuck somewhere in the early 1990s. But despite living in a world where time resets every week, a few characters did something almost impossible in Simpsons logic. They died and stayed dead. Their stories ended for good, leaving behind emotional echoes, shocking twists, and sometimes real-world controversies that changed the trajectory of the show. One of the earliest and most emotionally powerful character deaths in the show was Bleeding Gums Murphy, the jazz musician who served as Lisa's mentor. Even though he appeared in only a handful of episodes, his presence lingered in the atmosphere of the show because of how much he meant to Lisa. Bleeding Gums was never treated as a joke. He was one of those rare Springfield characters who felt grounded, sincere, and human. When the show revealed his death, it happened quietly.
Baby, you are gonna knock him dead. Here, take this for luck.
Your sax! Thank you so much!
Lisa learned about it from a television in the hospital lobby. No dramatic buildup, no grand last words. It was exactly the kind of death that makes real life feel unfair. His passing hit Lisa like a weight she never expected to carry. She had already felt isolated for her intelligence, her empathy, and her musical passions, and Bleeding Gums was one of the few adults who saw her for who she was. His death created one of the show's most soulful moments as Lisa played her saxophone on the bridge and his ghostly image appeared beside her. The moment was tender, sad, and unforgettable. And in a show where characters often return for comedic cameos, Bleeding Gums stayed dead. His legacy continued only through references, memories, and the musicians Lisa would later admire. The next major death to hit viewers emotionally happened years later with the Mona Simpson, Homer's long-lost mother. Mona's character was a symbol of everything Homer wished he could have, but never fully did. A mother who loved him, but was forced into a life of hiding after rebelling against Mr. Burns. Throughout her episodes, Homer struggled with resentment, hope, longing, and confusion, feeling torn between wanting a mother and wanting to forgive a woman who never had the chance to raise him. That complexity made her death especially devastating. It didn't happen as a twist, a joke, or a flashy finale. It happened quietly in Homer's childhood bedroom. He found her already gone, already still as he tried to wake her from sleep. The emotional weight of that moment struck fans unexpectedly.
I can't believe you're here. You keep disappearing and reappearing, and it's not funny. You're just like that show Scrubs.
Mona had been a spark of idealism, rebellion, and freedom. A reminder that every character in The Simpsons had a story beyond their comedic shells. Her Viking funeral, the boat pushed across a lake and set ablaze, became one of the show's most visually poetic moments. Her death stayed with Homer across the series. It changed him, softened him, and reminded viewers that even in a world built on satire, grief is a universal human truth. While Mona and Bleeding Gums had emotional exits, the show also delivered deaths that were deeply dark in a completely different way. None more iconic than Frank Grimes. Frank Grimes, or Grimy, appeared in only one episode, but he became one of the most memorable characters in Simpsons history. He was the antithesis of Homer, hardworking, logical, serious, and deeply unlucky.
In the meantime, here's Frank Grimes. the self-made man?
What? Oh, yes, that fellow. Just put him somewhere out of the way and find that dog.
Yes, sir.
Grimes represented the kind of real-world person who would be horrified by Homer's incompetence and shocked at how Springfield rewarded Homer's chaos. His frustration built up across the episode until it consumed him entirely. The scene where he tries to mimic Homer ironically leads to his electrocution. It was a death that was not just dark, it was a statement. Grimes didn't just die, he was destroyed by the absurdity of the Simpsons universe, almost as if the writers were saying that realism simply cannot survive in Springfield. The funeral scene where people chuckle at Homer sleeping in the pew while Reverend Lovejoy says, "Let us not blame Homer Simpson for the untimely death of Frank Grimes," became one of the most haunting jokes in TV history. Grimes' death was so impactful that the show returned to it years later with the introduction of Frank Grimes Jr., who sought revenge on Homer. Even in parody, the darkness of Grimes' death left a permanent mark on the show, but no Simpsons death is more controversial, more unexpected, or more narratively seismic than the death of Maude Flanders. Unlike other characters, Maude didn't die because the writers wanted an emotional plot twist. Instead, she died due to contract issues behind the scenes. Maggie Roswell, her voice actress, left the show after salary disputes, leaving the writers with a choice: recast the character or remove her completely. They chose the latter, and the moment they killed Maude remains one of the most infamous scenes in Simpsons history.
I like the fresh air and looking at the poor people in the infield.
Maude was standing in the stands of the Speedway when she was struck by a barrage of T-shirts shot from a cannon. The moment was both absurdly comedic and shockingly brutal. Ned's reaction afterward, collapsing in despair, whispering that he didn't even get to say goodbye, was heart-wrenching. Maude's death forever changed Ned Flanders, transforming him from the endlessly cheerful neighbor into a widower grappling with loneliness. It added emotional depth to a character who had previously been defined mostly by religion and kindness. Maude's death stands out because it permanently altered the dynamic of The Simpsons' most wholesome family. For years afterward, Maude returned only as a ghost, a memory, or a hallucination. She never truly came back, and she remains one of the most defining absences in the town of Springfield. After Maude's death, one of the most respectful and emotionally significant departures was that of Edna Krabappel. Edna was more than just Bart's teacher. She was a symbol of adult exhaustion, sarcasm, and resilience. She had lived through failed relationships, divorce, burnout, and endless stress. And despite it all, she still managed to teach, discipline, and sometimes care about her students. Her romance with Ned Flanders became one of the sweetest, most unexpected developments in the show. But when Marcia Wallace, Edna's voice actress, passed away in 2013, the producers made an immediate and heartfelt decision: retire the character forever. They refused to recast her. In a simple chalkboard gag, Bart wrote, "We'll really miss you, Mrs. K," and fans instantly understood.
Bart!
Mrs. K. Hey, it's Saturday. Your powers are useless against me.
Relax. I'm just here to have fun like everybody else. Don't think of me as a teacher.
Later, Ned briefly mentioned that his late wife loved to laugh, confirming Edna had passed away in the show's continuity. Her loss left a hole in the school scenes, a silence in Springfield Elementary that could never quite be filled. She became one of the most respectfully memorialized characters in Simpsons history. Beyond these emotional heavyweights, other character deaths leaned more toward absurdity, satire, or background storytelling. One such example is the death of the original Fat Tony. The mafia boss was an iconic part of Springfield, known for his intimidating voice, threatening manner, and bizarre involvement in local crime. His death, however, came surprisingly casually. He died of a heart attack after experiencing too much stress. The episode quickly replaced him with his cousin, Tony, who eventually overrated himself into becoming indistinguishable from the original Fat Tony.
Bob only did me a favor to get something in return? Oh, Fat Tony! I will say good day to you, sir.
Okay, I will go.
This comedic twist created a surreal cycle in which the replacement fully became the character he replaced. It allowed the show to technically keep Fat Tony alive while acknowledging that the original version was canonically dead. It remains one of the cleverest loopholes in the show's handling of character mortality. Another lesser-known but permanent death occurred with Homer's Vegas wife, Amber. Amber was the woman Homer drunkenly married during his chaotic Vegas trip with Ned. She appeared again later, trying to claim her role as Homer's legal wife. But the show later wrote her out entirely by mentioning casually that she died from a drug overdose. It was an unexpectedly dark detail delivered with almost no setup. Her death wasn't emotional or symbolic. It was simply a cold end to a chaotic storyline. The abruptness of her exit reflects how some deaths in The Simpsons serve as narrative closures rather than emotional arcs. Snowball Y, the original Simpson family cat, also remains part of the show's list of permanent deaths, though she died before the show even began. Mentioned often in passing, Snowball Wang's death became a staple of The Simpsons' recurring pet tragedies. Snowball 2 also died on screen when she was hit by a car, leading to a series of new cats named Snowball 3, Coltrane, and Snowball 5. Snowball 5 was eventually renamed Snowball 2 to save the show from continuity updates, and the writers even joked about this decision directly. While the pet deaths are simple, they contribute to a strange lineage of small but permanent changes within the Simpson household.
Just realized we never had a wedding for the cat and the dog. They've been living in sin.
Other characters, like Hans Moleman, are often shown dying in episodes, but these deaths are non-canon. Moleman has been crushed, exploded, hit, vaporized, eaten, attacked, and electrocuted. But he always reappears, alive and confused in later episodes. Because episodes in Springfield reset every week, his deaths don't count as official canon. The same applies to the endless gory or dramatic deaths in the Treehouse of Horror specials. Those deaths, however graphic or memorable, are not considered real within the continuity. The deaths that truly matter, the ones that reshaped storylines, altered relationships, or honored real-life actors, are the rare few who left Springfield forever, and each one in its own way contributed to the evolution of The Simpsons. The town is largely timeless, but these losses made the show feel mortal for brief moments. They reminded viewers that comedy can coexist with grief, that satire can coexist with sincerity, and that even in a cartoon world, finality has power. These character deaths also reflect changes in the show's creative direction. Early seasons used death sparingly, mostly to create emotional weight. Middle seasons used it occasionally as satire or shock value. Later seasons used it primarily to honor actors who had passed away. Through all of these phases, each death added new emotional textures to Springfield, shaping how fans saw the characters who continued living. One of the reasons these deaths resonate is because The Simpsons rarely lets time pass. Bart will never grow up, Maggie will never speak, Marge's age will never shift. But when a character dies, it becomes one of the few irreversible events in a world built on reversibility. The permanence of these moments stands out even more strongly because everything else resets. And for longtime fans, these deaths become anchors in the show's timeline, moments you remember vividly, no matter how many hundreds of episodes pass afterward. The Simpsons may continue for decades more. New characters will appear, some will fade into the background, and a few may even meet their fates in future seasons. But the ones lost so far, the mentors, the mothers, the gangsters, the teachers, the icons, the oddballs, remain an unforgettable part of the show's legacy. Their shadows still linger in Springfield, adding depth to a world that often pretends nothing ever truly changes. Even after accounting for the most well-known character deaths, one thing becomes clear. The Simpsons has always treated loss in a strangely grounded way for a cartoon. The show's writers understood that death can be both comedic and meaningful, and that removing a character, whether permanently or for a one-time gag, reshapes the emotional chemistry of the town. Springfield works because it feels lived in, and part of living is sometimes losing familiar faces. Even the minor characters who disappeared without big storylines left behind tiny gaps that fans still remember, proving how deeply the show embedded its world into pop culture. Some deaths served as satire. When the writers killed off characters like Frank Grimes or Dr. Marvin Monroe, it wasn't just shock value. It was commentary on how Springfield treats competence, sanity, or ambition. Grimes died because he couldn't survive the absurd logic of a world built around Homer's ridiculous luck. That death said more about the show's universe than any single joke ever could. Even Marvin Monroe's ambiguous disappearance was a playful jab at how sitcom characters can vanish without explanation. The eventual reveal of his tombstone only added to the mythos, giving longtime fans the sense that the writers were in on the joke with them. Other deaths hit differently because they created emotional grounding. Maude Flanders is still the clearest example. Her death wasn't a gag or a satire or a meta trick. It was a genuine narrative shift. Suddenly, Ned Flanders, the most relentlessly optimistic man in Springfield, had to confront real grief. Watching him break down, rebuild his life, and even struggle with dating again gave the usually one-note Christian neighbor unexpected depth. For many fans, Maude's death became one of the last moments when The Simpsons felt truly human. Then there are deaths that quietly shape the show without drawing attention. Characters like Becky, the babysitter, the various one-off gangsters, or even side villains who vanished in elaborate chase sequences, they helped define the show's tone. Springfield survived hovercraft accidents, wild animal attacks, explosions, stunts gone wrong, and Sideshow Bob's murder attempts. And through all of it, the animators used death to stretch the boundaries of what The Simpsons could get away with. That willingness to push suspension of disbelief made the show feel limitless while still maintaining internal logic. But the most fascinating thing is how fans treat these deaths. Over time, every lost character, major or minor, became a piece of Simpsons trivia, a little corner of nostalgia that audiences love revisiting. Some even sparked debates. Did Homer really kill Frank Grimes Jr.? Is Dr. Monroe actually alive? Did Bleeding Gums Murphy deserve more screen time before the writers removed him? Each disappearance created micro-mysteries that kept forums, YouTube channels, and dedicated fans analyzing the show year after year. And maybe that's why killed-off characters matter so much. They represent turning points not just for the show, but for the viewers who grew up with it. Every death marked a small evolution in Springfield, a shift in tone, a change in character dynamics, or a sign of the writer's changing creative direction. Even now, decades into the series, the legacy of these characters stays alive through flashbacks, references, retcons, and fan theories. Their absence is felt precisely because they were once so deeply woven into the fabric of Springfield. In the end, the story of every killed-off character in The Simpsons is really the story of how a cartoon built a community that feels real enough for loss to matter. Whether the deaths were played for laughs, shock, emotion, or satire, they all contributed to a world that viewers continue to care about. Springfield might be immortal, but its characters aren't. And that's exactly what keeps the town so strangely alive.